email us, or connect with us on social media.
I'm Punky. Raising 3 kids alone isn't easy. I'm barely keeping it together. Wearing a bathing suit as underwear right now.
Ooh, check you out.
I am not ready to date again. Your father and I just broke up. A fireman? Holy macanoli.
It's good to see you, Punky Brewster.
You let that smoke show go? Woof.
You two didn't.
She tried to seduce me.
Oh, Punky Brewster is back.
Punky Brewster, all new, Thursdays on W Network.
Hello and welcome to the Rogers TV COVID-19 program. I'm Carol Merton, and before I welcome our guests today, I'd like to just share a few thoughts with you. Here in Grey Bruce, we continue to celebrate that we are in the green or prevent stage of the provincial reopening framework. On March 23rd, the Grey Bruce Health Unit issued a media release to remind us that the third wave of COVID-19 is likely. We cannot afford to let up our efforts to prevent a resurgence of COVID-19 as we move toward the vaccine's widespread distribution. Despite being in a favorable position with active cases, new cases, and case numbers, we cannot afford to become complacent. We must double down on our efforts to help ensure that the residents of Grey Bruce remain as safe as possible as we await the widespread distribution of the vaccine. The Grey Bruce Health Unit asks the public to put forward as much effort as possible to prevent this third wave. The initial message that kept our community in a favorable position and safe remains just as important and meaningful today. Watch your distance, wear a mask, wash your hands. We want to continue to enjoy being in the green zone, and it is good to be green, and we want to do all that we can to stay green. The sacrifices that we make each and every day are helping to prevent the spread of COVID-19, and we are making a difference. Thank you to all of the community and those who are working together to help us stay in the green. And on that note, I want to also welcome our guests today, Jeremy. Jeremy Hedges is from the Canadian Shield, which is a personal protective equipment company. And I interviewed Jeremy a while ago. It's almost a year. We were just saying before the program, I can't imagine it's been a year, but he's back to tell us about where we are in space with personal protective equipment, and also where the Canadian Shield is as far as a company. Jeremy, welcome back.
Hey, Carol. Thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure. So fill me in a little bit. Maybe you can tell the viewing audience first, for those who may have missed the first program, your role in the company and what is the Canadian Shield?
So yeah, I'm Jeremy Hedges, the founder and CEO of the Canadian Shield. When the pandemic started, we were an education technology company. We worked with school boards across the country to bring technology into the classroom to teach meaningful technology skills. So when the pandemic hit, we had the fabrication equipment on hand that we could jump in and help our community. At first, we stepped up to manufacture 10,000 face shields. That number quickly grew to about 1 million in the first month. And in total, we made 16 million face shields for Canadian frontline healthcare workers over a 4-month period last year.
When we chatted, did you ever think when we had our conversation that you'd be saying that number today? Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think if we knew how high the mountain was when we started that journey, we might have thought twice about how we were going to get there. But no, it's been a pretty incredible year for our team. I mean, really, that climb with face shields was the start of a very large technologically advanced PPE manufacturing company right here in Waterloo, Ontario. So in the months following, we invested in manufacturing medical masks here in Canada as well. So we make ASTM level 1 through 3 3-ply blue surgical masks. And have invested in creating our own automation to do the same. So we're one of the largest manufacturers in Canada, if not North America, for ASTM medical masks now, and continue to roll out new medical devices and are investing in what we hope the future of the PPE manufacturing industry looks like here in Canada.
So you showed the masks, but you also have the actual shields, right? You make the plastic shields as well, because I remember you demonstrated them on our previous program. So you started out in one direction and you have absolutely pivoted like so many different businesses in a totally different direction. Mm-hmm. How have you managed this huge demand? I mean, 4 months producing what you've been able to produce. How have you coped with that? How many people work for you?
So at the start of the pandemic, we were 7 people. We grew to a peak of 330 in June of last year. Yeah.
Wow.
Today we're closer to 100 people. Like as demand has shrunk and we've become more automated and globally competitive, our workforce has shrunk a little bit, but we think that we're at a very stable point, and we have several new product lines. Like we're continuing to onshore other critical medical devices with our company. So I think 100 is where we'll stay, at least on the medical device side.
Can you talk a little bit about the technology you had to either innovate or develop to do what you're doing, and then lead us into the new products and how you decided what new products to build?
Yeah. So when we started, the reason why we were able to jump in and move so quickly, and we were sort of one of the first manufacturers making face shields in Canada at scales, because we had 3D printers and laser cutters. But if you've ever used that equipment, it's fairly slow. 3D printers, like just to make one face shield headband, it would take an hour. So wow. It was an extremely arduous process to get started. We eventually moved to just laser cutting. We created a design that could be laser cut out of a sheet of plastic flat, and then it would fold up into a face shield. Again, 45 seconds to make a single shield. So we moved to a stamping technology. We invested in what are called automated traveling head presses. And these machines, think of them like a 45-ton cookie cutter. So you've got a railway that plastic moves down, and it punches out shields at about 60 parts per minute through 5 layers. So wow. At our peak, we were doing about 200,000 face shields a day through the 3 lines that we had. Our trouble wasn't how many we could cut, it was how many we could count and box and bag and get out the door. And then, we've invested in developing our own technology on the mask side. So a mask like this, a medical mask, it's made with a material called, they're called non-wovens. So it's essentially a plastic that's extruded into a sheet form, and then it's welded to shape. So it's folded and welded and cut into the shape of a mask. So we've developed some of our own technology to do that in an automated way. Currently, what we've automated is how to make a perfect quality checked mask from raw material. And what we're working on is how to package that on the back end. So create a system that you put raw material on the end, you load the machine, and out the other end comes the quality checked box. And we think that that's where, if Canadian manufacturing is going to be sustainable and we're going to see reshoring across industries, it needs to be very competitive, it needs to be automated. We need to take a new fundamental approach to how we manufacture here in North America.
So you're talking a variety of design, technology, logistics. So you had to look for the people with those skill sets, correct? Where did you find them?
Right here in Waterloo. Waterloo is actually the automation supercluster of Canada. So there's about a dozen companies in the region. We poached some people from other organizations, and there's a lot of talent from the height of BlackBerry days. We're really a technology center and an automation center in Canada. So the combination of those things, we found the right people at the right times. We've made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. There's been bumps on the hill, but it's been a pretty incredible journey. I think we've got a great team, and the vision is sound. We've learned the lesson of what it means to be dependent on global supply chains and what it means to be vulnerable. So I think that the steps that we're taking, and I think that Canada needs to take across the board in terms of reshoring and domesticating our supply chain, are just so important.
So certainly, you're right. That's a lesson we're absolutely learning as we all wait for the vaccine to arrive. That's a really good lesson. And of course applies to PPE as well. So you now have approximately 100 on staff, and are they all within one factory, or do you have different, we think of places as people can work from home, or they can be, so how do you make this work for you?
Yeah, so we have pretty heightened PPE protocols here. Luckily we make PPE, so that's easy for us. But about 30% of our staff are work from home. It's all the administration and sales and marketing, et cetera. But otherwise, our people are on the production floor. At any time, they're wearing a face shield, a mask, gloves. There's sanitizing stations everywhere, temperature scanners. It's quite and that was something that, because we scaled a manufacturing operation at the peak of the pandemic, we kind of pioneered how to safely operate in a pandemic. So we had, I think, a very rigorous approach, and knock on wood, it's kept us whole so far.
Excellent. Just out of curiosity, what color zone are you?
We're in red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so meaningful to be able to share your information, knowing that you're doing everything you can to protect people who are in a red zone. We're green, but it still applies. We have to wear the PPE. We have to follow the protocols, no matter what color zone you are in. So, from your perspective, what's different about the second wave? And I hate to say that word, third wave, but that is what the media release told us, and how people are managing. So, from your perspective.
Yeah. I think people are fatigued. I think universally, when you talk to people about COVID or being locked down, particularly in red zones and even gray in the Greater Toronto area, I think people are understandably fatigued by it all. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. We've got a few months before vaccines should arrive for everybody. So I'm optimistic about that, and I'm looking forward to getting my poke. I think, the one thing that I would say is that with some of that fatigue comes folks less, they're not following the rules as much, and you see it in public and you hear stories. So I'm hoping that, people can kind of grit their teeth and get through and focus on, doing the right thing, and let's make this third wave as small as possible. There's other countries around the world that are taking a bit of a different approach to managing the third wave. So if you look at countries like Germany, France, Austria, they've implemented mandatory medical masks for all of their citizens. And if you look at the statistics associated with their death rate, their case rate, there's been a pretty significant impact. They don't have a third wave. They have the new variants, but they don't have it. To me, that probably is the way we should go, is wearing better masks. It's one thing to wear a cloth mask. It's another thing to wear a medical grade device. And they are affordable. Like, I don't think that there isn't a chasm in terms of affordability for people. They're widely available. We have a broad domestic sector now. So I think that's something that we could do better. But overall, just hoping that this wave is as small as possible and we can put this thing to rest.
Distributing your masks. So how far do you distribute? What's the market demand for you, Jeremy? Without it giving me any secrets, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting with Canada. In many ways, we're kind of on our own island from a regulatory perspective. So when we get Health Canada approval, that doesn't allow me to sell into the States, doesn't allow me to sell into Europe, or frankly any other. It's not internationally recognized, our standards. So if we want to enter the U.S. market, that might be a $250,000 investment for one product. So
Wow.
it's especially at a time when the market is very saturated, and the U.S. actually has taken the approach of buying up companies that make PPE and then building them into their healthcare system to do a cost plus model. There's not a lot of room for us to move to export in the short term. So we've got to focus on being innovative and trying to open up some of these contracts here in Canada to give us better runway and space in the market. The medical device sector in general in Canada is pretty, and understandably so, it's difficult to enter, but with that also comes, difficulty to innovate, and it's how you define innovation that's key. So in the context of contracts for, say, medical masks, medical masks now across the country are contracted for the next 5 to 9 years. And we can't touch that volume. So if we wanted to sell into hospitals, we would have to innovate on the performance of a medical mask. Mm-hmm. And that might be something like biodegradability, and we might be close. But innovating on the production side versus the product side, it's product that they will accept, not production. And I think that we should be looking at the economic impact as innovation, like onshoring, creating a secure supply chain, creating local jobs. That should be taken into account when we look at innovation clauses in contracts, because ultimately these are broader public sector dollars, taxpayer money that could be staying right here at home. And if you look at a medical mask, we're competitive, penny for penny with masks coming out of China. And at 10 cents versus 10 cents, the difference in the dollars that stay in the country from somebody importing versus someone manufacturing here, it's 70 to 80%. It's astronomical. So
Wow.
If you take that and look at healthcare spending across the country, across all of these verticals, there's a real opportunity here to make a difference.
So what you're explaining to me is that you're a Canadian company, you have a Canadian market, you employ Canadian people, and that you are innovative in the products that you are providing. So certainly some significant things to consider. So your market would be more into retail outlet kind of, as opposed to the medical, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, we do sell, like we sold a lot into government when they were purchasing PPE back in March, April, May of last year, sold quite a bit into long-term care and hospitals while they were still at peak demand. But now that the market has normalized, that's sort of shut in the short term. And I think policymakers and the purchasing organizations that work on these files, they're looking at how they can create more market space for companies like ours so that we have runway post-pandemic. In the short term, we sell a ton on our website. We have a web store, like a Shopify store that people buy from, and that's pretty popular for us. And then, meat packing plants and other food processing organizations that we've got stable run rate business with.
Which is great. And certainly I know organizations often would want to go to one supplier because there was a cost efficiency, but we've also learned some significant lessons around that, correct?
Yeah, you know what? We need a diversified domestic supply chain, not just in healthcare, but I think across the board. Like this is the first blip. Climate change is coming, and we don't know what we're going to be short of next. I think, food production is another thing that we should take a really hard look at, and where else we can onshore critical products and things to keep Canadians safe.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. I do have a question about climate change, but first I'm going to ask you about the medical masks and how you measure their effectiveness and how you know they're meeting the needs, especially around the new variants of concern. So maybe you could speak a little bit about the quality control and how you know that we're protected as Canadians.
Yeah, so every batch of production that we go through on any level of mask, we have to have tested. So it's done by a third-party laboratory, and they give us testing on bacterial filtration efficiency, particle filtration efficiency, and then a few other measures like flammability, and I hope you're not lighting your mask on fire, fluid penetration, so how water resistant it is, and then your differential pressure, which is basically a measure of how hard it is to breathe through your mask. And I know that was one of the things people are always concerned about was, can I breathe through this mask? But yes, and we measure that. So on an ASTM level 1 mask, your filtration efficiency is 95%. On level 3, it's 98%. A level 2 is also 98%. The difference between a level 2 and a level 3 is the fluid resistance. So that's basically a level 3 mask is reserved for an operating room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a member of the public wanting to buy a product or order from your store online, what would you recommend as far as the level that would be adequate for them to go out if they had to do the once a week grocery shop?
I recommend the level 2. It's the highest filtration efficiency, and it's kind of in the middle of the road on pricing. They're pretty inexpensive. We're competitive. We also made a reusable medical mask. So we used the level 2, level 3 filter, and made an automated process to make reusable masks. They basically can be washed and reused between 10 and 15 times, but they use a medical grade filter in them. Hard to tell you what the difference in filtration is from use 1 to 15, but some studies have shown that it can be maintained for up to 10 wash cycles.
So that's good to know for those people who choose to do that. We do, unfortunately, see masks on the ground. Unfortunately, can you offer some advice to the public about what they should do and how we can protect our environment around the masks? You mentioned moving towards one that might be degradable, but let's talk about now, and then let's talk about how long are we going to need to wear masks?
I don't know how long. I suspect that it might be another year or more that masking is pretty common. If you look at, the ratio of people that need to be vaccinated and the fact that currently there aren't vaccinations for kids under a certain age, there's going to be a period of time that we have to go through before we're really fully back to normal. So that could be a year, that could be 2 years. The sooner the better. On the environmental side, as to how to deal with masks, unfortunately, because it's mixed plastics, you can't recycle it. They've got the aluminum nose bridge in there, and it wouldn't go through your standard blue bin, so it would have to be landfilled. That being said, I know we're working on, and several other folks are working on biodegradable masks, and hope to have some announcements out in the next few weeks. So,
excellent. I know that there have been concerns as well about wildlife and getting tangled up in the masks as well. So it's a delicate dance between having something that actually holds to a human's face, and certainly protecting, the wildlife. So it sounds like there are still some challenges out there. So what would it mean to have something that's biodegradable? How, is it the actual material that you have to change? Is it the recommendations? How do you do that? Again, without giving us your secret here.
Yeah. So it's a formulation of material, and there's different ways to biodegrade. You can create something that'll biodegrade in an anaerobic environment. So if it's in the dirt, it'll degrade down, or if it's exposed to sunlight or oxygen, like it's outside on the side of the road. So there's sort of two different pathways there.
Yeah.
And there's merits to both. The perfect world would be to have something that would degrade in all environments, but I think from a technology perspective, that will take some time. Short term, I think that making something that's degradable, in the earth or in a landfill, that's quite possible, and I think that's probably our phase one, and then we'll continue to build on that. And I think what I would like to see is that carry through the supply chain across a variety of medical devices and everyday stuff, like your plastic shopping bags, even your reusable shopping bags at like a Sobeys or whatever you might shop at. Like those reusable bags, they're reusable to a point, but it would be nice if those would biodegrade when they were done as well, because they are made with plastic. So I think there's a pretty wide variety of things that we can make biodegradable to lessen our impact.
And I think certainly, as we move forward, the climate initiatives in our environment, as well as personal safety, go hand in hand, correct? And they're both important, and you can't prioritize necessarily, but certainly important. How did you get your product delivered to the stores? That's you've talked about getting it to the box, but how do you get it where it needs to go? How do you ship it out?
I think in our case, we use a blend of vendors, so Canada Post, FedEx, UPS. Typically, it's you order on our website and we ship in a couple of days. So we've got a pretty constant stream of people picking up out back. Unfortunately, because you need a medical device license to sell medical grade products, we can't actually get our products onto a retail shelf. So we're limited to selling on our website, and again, it's a pretty good part of our business. But if I could, I would change those rules so that we could make that more accessible for people. Because right now, if you go to the store and buy a mask, a 3-ply mask, it's going to be an unrated mask. So it's not really medical grade. It's not really tested. It's just a mask.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what would it take for you to get a license?
We have our license. It's the Sobeys or Costco or whoever that would need to get it. Yeah.
Now I understand. So it's the end seller who has to have the license, and that's the difference. So we're almost at the end of the program. I always find, time goes so fast when I'm speaking to you. What haven't I asked you that you would like our viewing audience to know?
I just I got to thank everybody along the way that's helped us out. It's been just over a year for us now. Last Saturday marked 1 year of the Canadian Shield. It's been a really incredible journey. We couldn't have done it without an amazing Waterloo community. Communitech in particular really has supported us, in lockstep throughout this journey to avoid problems along the way. So I guess just thank you, and I hope everybody at home that's tuned in for the program stays safe, and we're all just about there. We're almost through it. So
yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being on the program, and absolutely, it's an amazing story to hear how you've grown, but also the innovation and the community that's come together to help keep other communities safe. So thank you, Jeremy, and all the best. And you feel free to join us again if you have additional news about your further adventures. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and thank you to our viewing audience. Please take care, stay safe, follow the public health unit guidelines, and thank you.